Hey, welcome back. I am Bill Faith, your host today, and we're going to be talking about the new Airbnb Icons update. So, I've got a very good friend joining me today as a special guest. I've invited him. He's actually never been on my podcast. I don't know how the hell this has happened. But if you know who Will Slickers is, you should jump over to LinkedIn as soon as you get done listening and look at his post. I think it was yesterday. We'll confirm when he gets here. So, it's probably like May 6th or 7th. We're recording this on the 8th. It was literally probably the most in-depth post and, eye-opening for me, that anybody has done to date, talking about the Icons update. I'm not an overly big fan of the Icons update. I'm gonna bring Will up, and we're gonna discuss this amongst some other things, today, but he kind of opened my eyes along with the post that David Angotti, also posted from Guesty with some different perspective. So hopefully this will show you guys that even if you have a strong opinion about something like I do on a lot of things, the eyes can be open. So without further ado, my main man, Will Slickers. How are you, buddy?
Bill Faith, I'm doing great. Now that I'm here with you finally on the pod. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
This
And
has to be reciprocal. So that means I get to be on one of your 17 podcasts that you own, right?
hey, I think we had you on Slick Talk. We gotta get you a refresher. Let's get you on another tour.
I
Bill
love it.
Faith, everywhere you go to listen to your shows. Let's
So
go.
those of you that don't know, Will hosts my podcast for me. He is just a phenomenal partner, and a good dude and a tremendous MC, for the STR Wealth Conference the last 2 years. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no, that's always one of my highlights of the year is getting to get on stage, either with or without Julie George. I've emceed without her, and it's not the same as STR Wealth. STR Wealth, we have a lot of fun. You guys bring a lot of energy, so I'm just excited to be included into the ecosystem of Bill Faith. It's a fun ecosystem for those that don't know how far and wide it is. It's very fun.
That's well, speaking of how wide it is, you and I guess, kind of have share a little bit of a similar background from the ground transportation space, right?
Yes, sir. I was a failed chauffeur. Got excited into this thing called a car payment. I was like, man, how do I get rid of this? And I could drive people around. Didn't know about this thing called Uber though. So yeah, it was a nightmare of a first business, but glad I went through that because it led me into hotels and hospitality, and now we're where I am today. So it's been a great fun ride. Not
That's
no
awesome.
pun intended. No pun
Right,
intended.
right, right. Well,
No.
there's always pun intended, right? So
Yeah.
let's dive in. Let's talk about the icons update. Why don't you? I mean, I'll just start. I made it abundantly clear. I think it's like the worst effing update that Airbnb has had. Um, pr- right behind the December 4th, 2022 update, right? If anybody remembers that with the cleaning fees, and all that type of stuff. I put out a couple of reels on my Instagram, made my position loud and clear, on this update. You had a completely opposite opinion of that, right? And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this. So, hence the LinkedIn post I talked about in your intro. Kind of just recap what your post was about and what your position is on this update for everybody.
So this update is a part of a bigger picture, in my opinion, in the sense of a lot of people think of it as a PR stunt or some way just to get some quick eyeballs. And yes, like I wouldn't call it a PR stunt though. So it's a strategy in my opinion, from the high level 30,000 foot view is
Is Chesky that smart?
I think so. I think so. You and I have talked behind the scenes, and you know that we've gotten to learn a lot
Yep.
of the world of behind Brian Chesky and Airbnb, and the the team is incredibly smart. And I think Brian he doesn't play in months or weeks or days or even years. He plays in decades. That's how I see his kind of thinking. And so for me, this was the start, the official real start of Airbnb, not just being a OTA or a booking platform or a tool for people to list their property. This is the first real phase and transition of them becoming a social media platform like Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. Um, but in a way more creative, unique way than Facebook could have done or
All right, let's
especially at their
unpack
time.
that because I have never heard anybody with that opinion, and that's what I wanna talk about, right? How does
Yeah.
Airbnb, because people are listening and they're
Yeah.
like, "Will, you're fucking crazy. They're not gonna, replace Facebook." Are you talking about, like, integrating to where our social profiles are part of the vetting process for guests? How do you see this unfolding?
Yeah, so, the first thing with Icons is that Icons was all very well done, let's say, like, from experiences with celebrities to Airbnb actually owning the asset for the first time, not just partnering or doing some kind of piece, right? They own the up house. They own these properties or these, icons that they've created outside of the experience, right? They can't own the time spent with Kevin Hart or whoever on tour, right? Like, that's just not gonna happen. But this is the first time that they've owned into it, and this is Brian's phase of becoming the Imagineer that he's always wanted to be. He's a big fan of Disney and what Walt and his brother built with Disney World. And an Imagineer is the people that build the parks. They're the ones that create the design, and they're very design focused. So this is Brian's first ability to kind of fulfill that dream with Icons, but the attention it got, which I pulled some statistics, there you go, for you, Bill.
How many
Um,
coffees did you have at Starbucks?
a lot. I've had a lot of caffeine today. Um, here's some stats on the Icons. In just 1 week, it generated over 8,000 media pieces, so articles, blogs, etc., with over 37 or 371 million social media impressions. Um, it generated more press than their IPO. So this was not a PR stunt. It was a eyeball attention because every one of the icons that you try to book during their announcement always pushed you back to the app, even on web browser. So if you tried to book on browser, even if you were logged in, it pushed you to the app. The key metric that every social media platform that, like, depends on their livelihood is how much time do you spend in my app? That's their metric. How much time can I get billed to be on Facebook? How much time out of the day can I get billed to doom scroll through TikTok or the YouTube Shorts or whatever, right? Like, that's their metric and goal.
8 hours and 47 minutes according to my phone every day.
There there you go. There you go. So that's the metric they're tracking. Now Airbnb, the icons piece did that. You got the attention with the crazy up house and all the fun stuff. You had to only go to the app to book it. There's all these little things that stacked up. And then, of course, now you see the profiles, like the features, right? Like you're the host profile or the traveler updates. All the features had something to do kind of with other people, building out your profile better, getting a little bit more intimate. And then, of course, group messaging, itinerary planning, being able to react in messages with hosts and with your travel mates or your whoever, right? You're going with this is all just a beginning phase just to get you more on the app because eventually, my prediction, I think, is we're going to see people posting not just, Instagram styled posts, but they're going to be posting real life in person experiences that they get to witness and see at your property that aren't picture perfect. They're not edited. They're not, done by some photographer that's going to make your listing look really beautiful. And then they show up and they see all the dings on the wall. This is going to meld the world of social media and inspiration, which I'll talk about maybe a little bit later. But um, social media inspiration on top of the actual travel and experience that we all know Airbnb for.
There's I'll use potentially a different word, and I'm not gonna put it into your mouth, it's gonna come out of mine, that I've really learned as I'm going through the process right now, as you know, of production of my first television show,
Mhm.
and it's aspiration. And,
Yeah.
I'm a very nuts and bolts, here's how you do things teacher type of a dude. Whereas there are certain channels that I'm trying to get a television show on that is not transactional from a business
Mhm.
perspective at all, only aspirational. And I think there was a lot of aspiration with Walt Disney when he was building Disney. And I know, and just so everybody knows, you've had access to the stuff you're talking about that nobody else in our industry has had in the last 5 to 6 months. So Will, I would say, is a level of an authority on what he's talking about as we're moving forward. Do you believe a lot of this is aspiration? And is part of this gonna be getting out of the house, and is Brian's vision to build, like, these ridiculous experiences around the property or even away from the properties?
I can't maybe speak to building out the properties and the experiences, but we saw Airbnb experiences when they first tried to launch in 2021 throughout
Sure.
COVID. Big failure. And my thinking is like you can't control, like they couldn't control any of the inventory of the experiences, right? It's all tour operators, third parties. kind of chaotic systems, maybe been around for 20 years, whatever the rule is, you can't control it. So Airbnb experiences are led up to be this big thing, and yet travelers were like, "Well, my house was great, but that kayak tour sucked, and this wasn't fun." You can't control the inventory. So this first, phase, I would say, is their version of being able to control that experience and control that inventory.
He doesn't
To
want us leaving their platform to go to Viate or
No,
TripAdvi whatever to, to book.
100%. They want you in the app because think about social media. Social media, when Mark Zuckerberg and all these guys were creating their platforms, they were all specifically for connecting people.
Right.
And connecting people that aren't in the same city, or if they are in the same city, you can just be up to speed with their life more frequently. Now, social media is so crazy, right? Like, if you don't post an Instagram story for a day, people are like, "Oh man, something must be going on with Bill. He's been quiet on socials," and it's all this like fake connection, in my opinion. I don't know what your day is like or your month is like just because I see or don't see Instagram stories or posts on LinkedIn or Twitter. This is gonna be the perfect marriage where, like, it's real experiences that you can actually go do. You can actually go see, that you can have these moments, and it will be on technology. So it's gonna have that perfect mix of human connection and have that inspiration. Because Expedia did a big study, and within 30, I think it was like 38 days is the window from, uh, a traveler wanting to book based off an inspired moment, whether it's a social media post or a TV show or a movie, right? Like White Lotus, like it was big popular, and you saw a lot of people travel to Italy when that show came out with season 1 or 2. Um, that effect, that inspiration piece is what is super driving. I think Airbnb, if they can capture that right with icons and all these incredible moments that they're able to build and hopefully, scale, that's going to be the big push for the inspiration to get
A
more
lot of
eyeballs.
people probably think you're crazy in what you just said. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give you a real life example here. I'm going to Spain, Italy, and Switzerland this summer. And because I booked that trip, Instagram, Facebook knew that I booked it, shared stuff in Messenger, but for between me and my wife, Instagram, Reels, stories. So what happened is my feed got filled with stuff for Zermatt, Switzerland, and they know I'm a skier because I skied all for the all through the winter. So now I've booked Banff. I think we talked about this earlier. I've booked going to back to Zermatt, Switzerland, Steamboat Springs, and Big Sky, Montana, all based on the influence of what I see of that inspiration, but also the aspiration of what I want to achieve when I'm there, based on what I've seen in Instagram Reels and on Instagram Stories. And that's a real thing that's happening right now, right? So is that kind of what you're talking about? That we're going to see those experiences and remember when we chatted about an hour and a half ago? First thing I said is, dude, I thought I get all the ski resorts mixed up. Brighton is in
Mhm.
Utah, outside of Salt Lake, and I'm thinking, well, it's got to be shit. It's close to Will in Denver, but anyways, they got 39 inches of snow. You know how I know? Because of Instagram and the videos that I see of people snowboarding and skiing and stuff.
Yeah,
Having their experience at that resort. I could care less about the resort. I want to have the same experience that they're having. That's what you're talking about, right?
100%. Definitely that way. But imagine it with people that you know and you love and have relationships with on top of that. So, like, the inspiration of like what they're doing, what they're seeing, mix in with like you could actually book this. Like this isn't just you have to watch your friends and live vicariously through them. This is like the open gateway. And Jamie Lane, he had a great post on LinkedIn as well around the same time when I posted about this, and it was about whether it's a PR stunt or a hype or a social media play like I'm talking about. At the end of the day, Brian Chesky and Airbnb as a brand are the best at being able to get new people on the platform. They had more use like that new like the user acquisition that they got from icons tenfold any type of paid marketing they could have done. Like with Google and sponsored, listing ranks on the side of like making sure Airbnb is the top whenever you search vacation rentals or short term rentals or any keyword. That just brought them the most amount of new business probably ever. So it's going to play out in a way bigger role. And like you think about the history of the last couple, let's give it a year. they acquired Game Planner AI for about $200 million. And last May, when Brian was on stage talking about the updates coming out in December, like you were talking about, Bill, we kind of got left flat. Last May, he was talking about, oh, next May, you're going to see a bunch of AI. Well, last update, we saw a little bit of AI with the way that they lay out the photos and kind of whatnot based on the rooms and the way that the floor plan works. But this update, we saw nothing with AI, nothing, not one. And a lot of people were freaking out about that. And I think you have to step back out of the host kind of mindset. I promise there's a point to this, but like get out of the host area and get into what these guys are talking about on other interviews that aren't involving short-term rental focused content. So Brian Chesky talks a lot about his relationship with Sam Altman. Sam Altman, who's also founder and CEO of OpenAI, talks a lot about how big of a role Brian Chesky has played into his founder's journey as a mentor, a friend. You think Brian Chesky is going to acquire $200 million company that wasn't even a real company. It was really an acquihire. They had no product. They were just the people that created Siri. So you think he's going to spend $200 million and not do anything with AI? It's going to be something that's not like a chat bot. It's not going to be like our friends at Bestie. It's going to be an interface. So think of all the inspiring moments dedicated and customized personally for you. My feed will not look the same as Bill Faith's feed. Bill Faith's feed will not look the same as Bria Faith's feed. Like it's going to be so different. Like I think it's just we're watching the tip of the iceberg right now.
So
That's
you're
kind of
what I'm hearing you say, if I unpack this, if I'm at home listening on Spotify or whatever, is Brian Chesky's creating TikTok in the early stages of potentially, because that's what I mean, TikTok and Instagram, like Reels, are like two of the smartest algorithms in the world based on our content consumption. They
mhm,
show us more of exactly what we want to see, right? Is that what you're talking about? Hey, you're interested in that A frame in Luray, Virginia. I'm interested in the ski in ski out chalet, wherever. And then we're going to start seeing that stuff integrated with our social within their platform and potentially even off of the platform.
100%. Yeah, because he's also talked about matchmaking. Like Airbnb has always aspired to be a matchmaker. They want to be able to custom like human connection is such the big pillar that Brian is so focused on that it really does focus. I think like I'm gonna try to step back here, slow down, let the coffee settle in for a second. But it it's the one thing that Brian has always been trying to solve from day one with couch surfing, kind of a origin story. I think now if you add the capital that they're able to deploy, there is no real limit to how they can take this. And so, yes, the connection piece, the feed piece, the algorithm in person and on virtual, it's going to, yeah, be just the beginning. I could be very, very wrong. And they could just be like, no, this was a total PR play. But at the end of the day, all these little details are adding up to what I think will become the ultimate social media platform.
If you're getting that many eyeballs onto your product, you have to capitalize on that more than just being PR and adding another million people as users onto the platform. There's no question.
Yeah, and they talked about that, like, the AI piece will come. He talked about, like, the how AI will play a role as matchmaking, so the profiles piece is gonna be really important for this app, and then, of course, the other services that they can get into, like fridge stocking, pantry, delivery type stuff, where hopefully, unlike experiences in 2021, they can actually control the outcome of that product, but again, it's gonna be really hard when they don't own the inventory. If they don't own the host that puts up their property for 3 months out of the year, right? Like, this is gonna be really hard, so it's gonna be interesting that it's not gonna be a perfect road, but I think they have an interesting path to becoming way more profitable and way more, like, bigger market cap than they have now, 100,000,000, with these added services, with their owning of the asset, and then, of course, time on app. So,
So do you have, I know there's gonna be people that are gonna comment when these reels and stuff go out on Instagram. Well, Will, what you're saying is Airbnb is gonna become our fucking competitor. They're gonna start buying all the assets. They're gonna go into 30A and buy 100 homes. They're gonna go to the Smokies and, they can overpay and buy the prime, cabins in downtown Gatlinburg and an Ober. Is that what are you implying that in any way?
No, I don't think they'll go cookie cutter and, like, buying 100 homes in 30 days. They're gonna go unique. They're gonna go very specialized, very unseen, right? Like, they want the up house, like, no one's able to compete with that. So they want
Right.
more stuff like that, whether it's a little bit dialed down version. But also thinking of, you know,
They might go buy
they
the $20 million crazy Harry Potter, Star Wars stuff
Mhm.
in Asheville up on the top of the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. But we've also seen this kind of backfire with previous companies, right? Where they buy the assets and they go from a tech platform to an operating company.
Right.
They don't wanna be an operating company, and I think they know that, so something like an experience that they can control, the Up House, Kevin Hart going on tour, whatever, I think that gives them more flexibility to not have to continuously host, but to actually be able to kinda have that mix of both worlds where they're not, like, focusing on the operations all the time, but they're actually showing you what can be done on the platform. So, for the people listening or dissecting this does mean you do need to step up your game a lot more, though, in the sense of creativity and design and even destination, right? Like, I know there's a bunch of tools out there that can tell you where to buy and how to get cash on cash, which you're the king of talking about. I just think it's going to be very, very, very specialized, and to really stand out for those icon moments, you're gonna have to go big.
It's interesting, and I don't disagree with anything that you said on this podcast, even though, the initial component think that, we are probably gonna butt heads and, go
Yeah.
that path. And it's interesting what you just said. So for about me and how I invest, it's not always it's not even probably 70% about the data and the cash on cash. It's not STR insights or AirDNA or STRIQ. Those are very important data sets, right? Very important. But it's the external intangibles that you find. Like, there's a market right now that is so investable that nobody knows about in this country, and there's nobody investing there right now, right? And it's because of something that's happened that has nothing to do with those data platforms that they can't see, that they don't know about, right? And those are the things that Brian knows. So if you flip that around, think about data.
Yeah.
Kenny Bedwell and Jamie Lane don't have access into Brian's head. He knows
No.
exactly what the fuck he wants to do. We're gonna have to anticipate that. And what I hear you saying for the listeners out there is you better pay more attention than just these updates.
Yeah.
Follow Brian on social. Watch when he's speaking at, Y Combinator or whatever it is in Europe, and pay
Mhm.
attention, because those are the tea leaves. If you read between them, you can see the path of where he's going, right? And those are the things that the hedge funds are doing when,
Yeah.
Tim Cook, it's not just his earnings calls, it's all the other stuff that they're piecing everything together to be able to forecast what's going to happen with Apple stock based on what
Mhm.
his roadmap is, right?
100%. And you nailed it on the head, and I think it's, around also what you talk about a lot, Bill, in the sense of, I don't think this is the time for people to just try to get a home under their management or ownership. It's creating a super property, legit super property, because the way you talk about super properties is positioning. If you have a super property, the way that Bill describes it, for any listeners, that's going to set you up for success in this real world of where the direction of Airbnb is going as a platform. Ryan Chesky, I do recommend, yes, listen to those earning calls, listen to what he says on other podcasts with, X, Y, and Z that aren't inside of our industry, because it will showcase, like my buddy Michael is the one that said it, but Brian doesn't think in years or even months. He thinks in decades. He
You know
just
what's
signed it.
interesting? You can almost track back to where the icon started.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2 years ago when he put his flat in San Francisco up on, and nobody thought a thing of it, but that was probably step number 1, to lead to this type of experience, because people wanted to stay at a CEO's property. And it was probably mostly hosts like us to say, "Hey,
Hmm.
I want to go see what he's doing. He's the guy." Just
Hmm.
like people want to come and stay in my properties that are hosts, so and it's interesting because success leaves clues,
Yeah.
right? And it's very challenging for the regular human being to see those clues until they've seen the outcome, and then they have to backtrack like I'm doing right now.
100%. And I remember their big feature update where they had over 100 updates. Brian was living in Airbnbs for a year. He was all over the world, traveling and staying, right? That also plays into this, just like him listing his flat, just like the data piece built. When you mentioned data, like Jamie Lane and Kenny Bedwell, like, yes, they have a ton of data, but if there's this very good article I will send you if you want it for the show notes, a very,
Sure.
very good article where Brian specifically quotes the amount of data that they have from not only just active listings and the activity happening daily on the app, but with everything. Like the data is insane. So I would not be surprised if we're about to see the most crazy, like you said, leaf planting, like little teardrop hints and nuggets around um, from not only their marketing, but from a lot of other places. So it's exciting times. It's a very, very exciting because especially with if you look back 2010, 2011, 2012, big era for Airbnb. They created Obama O's and McCain cereal and all these things to get funding, created a bunch of stuff, but they've always been about this like unique way of doing it. They've never done anything really cookie cutter. Now that they're a publicly traded company, yes, they have to go inside of some lines, but the board, when Brian pitched the up house, I'm sure didn't even bat an eye. Was like, yep, you know exactly what you're doing. Go run, build it, own it, and distribute it. It's going to be very fun, and I love seeing the overarch, 20 years later story come to a full circle, especially for Brian because it's something like a lot of us as founders and entrepreneurs, we want our ideas or creations to take off so quickly. We want it to be a month or a week, whatever. This is a 20-year story. Brian just signed another 10-year deal as CEO for Airbnb. He's not going anywhere. This is a big, big play. And I think for anyone listening, when you're creating your properties and creating your own experiences and following the stuff that you talk about, Bill, it's not what's happening a year down the road, a 2 year down the road. Like think in a bigger holistic picture. I think we'll all be doing pretty well.
I can't disagree. It's super interesting that if you pick 2 modern CEOs that people thought would fail and be ousted from their companies, it's Brian Chesky and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
they're probably
they're
2 of the
very
most
few.
successful over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. They're the very few founder CEOs that still exist in Silicon Valley, especially at publicly traded
100%.
levels. So
So, Will, take us out. What should the hosts that are listening to this be thinking, and what should their actions be after listening to what you just said for the last 28 minutes?
honestly, I think the very first simple, easy thing to do is get like I hate saying this, but I also love saying this because I think if you just get out of the host mindset, get out of our industry, look at what Amazon and Meta and all these companies, right? Like follow the bigger plays, like you're talking about, Bill. That's going to give you such a bigger picture. And there might be stuff I'm missing. Like I could be missing a ton of things. Like I haven't spent a ton of time evaluating this, but I'm sure there's little keys and nuggets that I'm not seeing that paint an even bigger picture because I'm not in the day to day. So I think just from one thing, don't just depend on Airbnb for updates and these cool little features or icons, but try to paint a full picture for yourself and see how long can you like the real game that we're all playing as entrepreneurs. How long can you outlast your competition, right? Like, how long can you be around and continue to do this? If you can do this successfully and profitably for 20, 30 years, great. And if your competition can only do it for 10, 5, 3, 1, even better. But I think this is like the easiest piece to go forward is just to step back. I used to this might be a little bit of a tangent of a story, but I think you know this about me, Bill. I was in Bible college for like 3 months. I was trying to become a pastor, and I had a
Seminary.
professor yeah, yeah, I had a professor talk about an hourglass-shaped window, right? You look at these churches or you look at these buildings and these beautiful hourglass windows that paint a big picture. But up close, you take one of those pieces of glass, it's ugly, it's gray and foggy, it's broken, it doesn't really make any sense, but if you're able to step back, you see the big, beautiful picture in front of you, it makes way more sense. So don't look at the little piece of glass, step back, look at the big picture and see how long you can last in that masterpiece or that piece of art. So
Dude,
that's
that's
my
an
advice.
awesome 30 minutes. Really appreciate you jumping on, especially last minute like this and rushing home so we could do this today.
No, of course. Thanks for inviting me on and reading my LinkedIn post. I was honored.
I
Oh,
read
great.
your shit all the time. I just don't tell people. I'm a voyeur behind the scenes, actually. I mean, I am a consumer. I literally spend 8 hours,
Yes.
40 I think it was 8 hours, 42 minutes over the last week on social media.
Dang.
And most of my time is Facebook, Instagram. I don't even know why I'm not on Twitter X anymore. I used to have like 11,000 followers, and I haven't used that platform for probably 5 years. But I mean, I stopped listening and watching news in
Yeah.
March of COVID in 2020. So now I can. It's interesting because of what you talk about that could be coming down the platform with the metamorphosis. The metamorphosis. I haven't even had any coffee of Airbnb. It's how I consume my content today. And I'm not an average 50-year-old, male, and how I should still be, sitting here at home reading the newspaper, but it's because of the curation and the complexity and the accuracy of what's happening with these algorithms today to where I get what I want and it
Yeah.
eliminates all the other shit that I'm not interested in. And if I don't
Exactly.
engage with something that shows up into my feed, then it doesn't come back eventually, like literally within hours and days. And that can end up being the exact same path that, he's going down. And there's now, I mean, just on this conversation, I can see a lot of the dots starting to
Mm,
connect. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah, 100%. Can I ask you, when you're scrolling, whether it's TikTok, Instagram Reels, because I do this, I wanna know if you do it too. Do you intentionally not like a post, or do you intentionally rewatch one because you like that type of content, you want it to continuously pop up because you're, like, mentally thinking about it, or do you just
Yeah.
engage and
So I'm very aware of how the algorithms work on social. So like if I and I'm not much on TikTok, I kind of default to Instagram first these days, which is just so weird for a 50-year-old guy. But if I see a reel or a story or something, and I am not a guy to like and follow stuff ever.
Mhm.
But if I see something that's really interesting, so like for me, and my wife will tell you, I'm uber OCD, quadruple type A, all the things that people describe me as, over the top, whatever.
Yeah,
But I mean, I'm all in, right? Like I'm all in or nothing. And I am so all in on like snow sports and snowboarding and skiing and everything right now. That's what my whole feed, is filled with. So I think I shared with you earlier, I saw that Brighton, Utah got 39 inches of snow in the last 2 days. So I went and I
yeah,
liked their Facebook page. I liked their Instagram. I liked the reel that I saw. I liked all this stuff. I even commented, not, and I never do that just to make sure that the algorithm sees that I'm like fucking all in and I want to keep seeing this stuff.
yeah,
And I think there's guests that are looking to book that understand how to find out the brand name of a property and book direct. I think there's people like me that know how to use social media, not in the marketing sense, which I do, but how to use it as
yeah,
a consumer. And where I think hosts sometimes fail, and I'm going to put hosts slash entrepreneur slash business owner, is they don't get in tune with their acquisition funnel, right?
mm,
And that's something that I probably need to talk more about in as a coach and a teacher in this space because it's not just about direct bookings. It's not just about revenue management. It's about getting in tune with the sales funnel. Hey, you talked about earlier that 38 days really initiates the start of the sales process and the cycle because a lot of this is happening on social today. And it may not be happening with our content, but we should be creating content based off the content that's being consumed by our ideal buyer that we want to stay in our properties. And people don't think
yes,
about that stuff, right? And that's what Brian at a super high level and his team is getting. And he's going to put that in front of us. The question is going to be, are we going to be one of the people that are going to understand it and grab it and take advantage of it?
exactly. And the one thing that any marketer is gonna hate to hear me say right now is you can't track that moment of inspiration. So when it comes to the cost or the, uh, potential cost of creating content, you kinda have to throw that out the door and not worry about the metrics and the budget and this. You need to create the content because you never know when that moment of inspiration is going to hit with a potential customer. You can't track that. That's not there's no URL or pixel or tracking feed that could tell you when Bill Faith was inspired to come ski and steamboat because he saw an Instagram reel. You can't track that. At
Uh,
least
uh,
yet. Maybe
it
one
goes
day,
back to one
but
of the greatest marketers of our generation, Gary Vaynerchuk, who says marketers ruin everything because we have to track everything for our own justification for ourselves and our clients from a marketing agency standpoint, right? And Gary's kind of done exactly what you just said. Hey, fuck that. I'm going to document, I'm going to put out my best content, right? And he uses the word document. It's not marketing. So those of you that are out there, it starts when you sign your contract. right? You can literally go to my LinkedIn feed, my Instagram feed, my Facebook, my personal page, my professional page today, and you will see me documenting when I signed the contract for my last property, right? And there's a story that goes along with that. And if you do that type of stuff, you're going to inspire somebody to have a connection, but you got to do it consistently every single day. It's kind of like you said about the
Yeah.
stories. The last 2 days, because it was my youngest daughter's birthday, I didn't post a whole lot. I think I might have like one or two. I'm typically a 5, 6, 7 story a day guy, right? And when I do
Mhm.
that, I have 400, 500, 600 people engaging with my content on my stories on Facebook and more so on Instagram.
Yeah.
Now I didn't get 100 people in the days that I only put 1 or 2. There's 2 reasons behind that. 1, I'm not telling a story through the day, and 2,
Yeah.
there's not enough throughout a 24-hour cycle to send that notification to bring people back to watch that content. So there's a reason that a guy like Gary Vaynerchuk is doing 10 to 15 story posts per day, and I think we're gonna and I don't wanna turn this into a social media masterclass, but
100%.
that's what I see and what you've stated that Airbnb is going down this path. And it is, in my opinion, it's going to drastically leave Verbo in the dust because they
Mhm.
are not innovative, not with their API, with anything. They're not innovative at all. And Brian is to stay in front of them, whether you love Airbnb or hate them. And I want to make this abundantly clear. I
Mhm.
love Airbnb. I did rail on this update, and I'm gonna sit here and say that I stand corrected. Will, you open my eyes. I did see
Let's
Jamie
go.
Lane's comment on my post that I put out. David and Guides, all 3 of you are kind of in that same boat, and I should feel that exact same way, right? So I'm migrating over to this, and this is what's super important why we consume this type of format of content, especially on
Mhm.
like your FHM network. You've got all the big guys in our industry, on your network. We should be listening to podcasts. We should be paying attention. And number one, I'll tell you, if you're a believer of this stuff, which I am, I would make sure you're following Brian Chesky on social media.
100%. 100%. And just one last thing before we wrap up the episode for anyone listening. I don't know when this is coming out, but happy birthday, Bill, May 11th. I got it wrong on my calendar, but I was early in a good way. So
You're the
for
first
anyone
one, like,
listening,
3 days early, I appreciate it. Well, you know when it's gonna come out because you can make that decision when we get done. You
true,
can
true,
slack
true, true.
Michael and say, "Hey, move that up. This might go out next Tuesday." Like, what is that, May 14th or something?
Yeah, yeah. The 14th, we could make that happen. Be great. But no, seriously, thanks for the invite. This has been so much fun. I love geeking out about this stuff outside of normal podcast content that we do every day. So this was exciting. So thanks for having
Dude,
me
this
on
is
the other side of
38
the mic.
minutes, by far the longest podcast I have ever recorded on this channel. And my average is like 12 minutes on here. So
I
hopefully
know.
you guys loved it. If you did, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you can pay attention. Here's what I'm gonna do. Will, you are amazing. So every time that we have an update, we're going to set a date and me and you are going to come in and discuss that update. How does that sound?
Ooh, I love that idea. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun. I
Love it.
look forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day. Go get more caffeine. But well, it's 4:45. You got about an hour. You don't want to drink caffeine your time after like 5 o'clock, right? Then you won't be able to sleep.
I probably won't be able to sleep now, so I probably should pop a bottle of wine or beer or something just to
Now you're
mellow
talking
out.
my language, not beer, but wine.
Hey, I'm not a red guy like you though. I don't know why I can't do red as much. So I'm a little bit of on the rosé white wine side. I don't
I
know.
have
Don't hate
some
me. Don't
amazing
shoot me, but
rosé in the refrigerator right there. So I'll remember that and I will bring a bottle next time I see you.
all right. Sounds like a deal. Thank you,
Awesome.
Bill.
Thanks, Will. Thank you guys for listening to SDR Unfiltered. Appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, wherever, and make sure you check out Will Slickers. He's got like 27 podcasts as well. Have a great day, everybody. Happy hosting.
Thank you for listening to STR Unfiltered, where we give you actionable episodes without the bullshit.